I'm here with Nancy, who is the founder of Anamav Postnatal Care, and she's also a postpartum doula. Welcome, Nancy, today. Let's start off with your experience working with moms, postpartum moms. Just if you could tell me a little bit about your background there, that would be awesome.
For sure. So my experience at this point is mainly personal. When it comes to my own friends, family, being a mom myself, obviously I've been a part of several mom groups now over the years. My daughter was born in 2020. And then my son was born last year. So my experience has mostly been personal up to this point because I just recently, as you know, started Anamav and became a doula recently as well and did my own training. But now, thankfully, I've had the pleasure of already interacting with quite a few families from the recent event we met at the Toronto Baby Show, and then for our clients and prospective clients that I've already started connecting with. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to growing this area of my career and life and journey. And yeah, just really looking forward to supporting moms in a professional manner now going forward.
And that's so needed. It's just awesome to see, more people getting into this space because I think it's really needed. And that really just brings me to my next question. Could you describe your connection, and if there's an emotional connection too, that's awesome, to postpartum mental health?
For sure. It's the reason why I do everything I do and why I'm here today. I experienced postpartum psychosis when my daughter was born, and I share this story very openly, as you know. So I I'm very much an advocate of perinatal mental health. I'm involved in a few nonprofit organizations in this space. Perinatal mental health is at the core of everything that we do at Anamav, and we're planning to expand that part of our services as well, specifically to offer mental health support services such as psychotherapy. So we are looking into that. But yeah, my experience with psychosis just really it changed my life, right? It changed the trajectory of my life, and I'm an accountant by background, so, it I never thought I would end up here. If I hadn't gone through that experience, I definitely wouldn't be here doing all of the things with Animav and my nonprofit work, and, you know, um, it ignited a fire in me to prevent other mothers from going through what I went through.
That's so similar to my story as well. Getting into the world of sleep, my daughter just would never ever sleep as a newborn, and it was the worst experience that I had. But when she did finally start sleeping after we worked with a sleep consultant, it was night and day. And I was pretty upset as well. It lit a fire under me to, help as many people as possible learn about newborn sleep, infant sleep, because it made me upset that there wasn't, more information and support. So I totally hear you on your experience and wanting to make sure that, you can help as many people as possible as well.
For sure. That's so funny you mentioned, like, being upset about it. I was literally just talking to a doula yesterday. We're going through the interview process and expanding our team, but we were just talking about how I was so angry. Like, when I was even in the hospital myself, like, I was just angry that
Yeah.
this was happening and that this is, allowed to happen to women and mothers. So definitely, like, a lot of my passion and a lot of my progress comes from maybe not such a great place. But
Got to
I
start
feel
somewhere.
like negative experiences definitely drive us more than positive experiences, I think. So
And when was what you did with the negative experience, right?
yeah, exactly.
So what would you say are some of the most common, mental health challenges that new parents and maybe specifically new moms face in that postpartum period?
So it's not just mothers, right? Like, yeah, fathers, other family members certainly can face these challenges as well. So specifically in the area of perinatal mental health, the term that we use is perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, or PMADS, and there's several different kinds. I mean, I know depression is a common one that we all know about, anxiety, but there's also OCD, PTSD, psychosis, and several others, and they can overlap. You can experience multiple of these disorders, and even though they're commonly referred to in the postpartum period, they can occur during pregnancy, they can occur during, like, your fertility journey, right? So, there's several different challenges from a mental health perspective that a new parent or an expecting parent can face, and they are more common than we imagine them to be.
Yeah, and especially with the rise in IVF over the last decade. I certainly see that with the clients that I've worked with in the past that, as you mentioned with, that fertility, that trying to conceive period, you're already bringing a lot of stress, anxiety, to the table. And so I find
Mhm.
that also contributes or can contribute to what happens to you afterwards, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's so many factors that can impact your mental health in the postpartum period, right? So yeah, your fertility journey for sure, birth trauma, your family circumstances, lack of support, financial stress, previous mental health conditions if you had them before you were pregnant, so many breastfeeding challenges afterwards. Like there's just so many factors that can negatively impact your mental health. So it's no wonder like the rates are so high.
Yeah, well, that actually just leads me to my next question is how common is it, and I don't know if you have any numbers, but how common is it for someone to not feel like themselves? And also, what do you feel like are some of those more common factors that contribute to mental wellness postpartum?
So baby blues, which is a commonly referred to term, which happens immediately after birth, is 80%. Like that's the statistics, and that's the first few weeks after birth. However, for specifically PMADs or perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, the rate is approximately 1 in 4 in Canada, or 25%. Like that's super high, right? And that's only the reported rates. Like I imagine that the actual rates are much higher than that.
Yeah,
So it is very common. The stats have definitely gotten worse after COVID and the isolation that families and mothers have experienced, including myself during being on maternity leave, not being able to go to like mom support groups and just being outside. It definitely has made things worse. And then you also touched on the symptoms, I believe, or what symptoms can occur or how you
yeah,
can identify these disorders. And I don't love the term disorders, that's just the term that's used. But some of the more common symptoms do include things like constant worry or racing thoughts, persistent sadness, disturbances to your sleep or appetite, and of course, thoughts of harming yourself or your baby. So these are just generic symptoms that can occur for multiple of the different disorders that I mentioned. But, these are just some examples, like definitely not an exhaustive list. There's several different symptoms that can occur, some that you would
mhm.
expect and some that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to so many moms who um, basically admit that they felt a lot of guilt or a lot of shame. They didn't instantly feel attached to their baby, or they didn't know what to do, and they felt like a horrible parent, right? When they're only like maybe a week old as a parent. And to know that these things are actually quite normal. And maybe if anyone's listening who is an expectant, first time parent, to know that you might want to prepare for these feelings that they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay to experience, and that maybe that they're not alone in experiencing them.
And there is a distinction between, like a lot of the things that you're saying that new mothers may experience don't necessarily mean that you're experiencing a PMAT, right? Or a mental health concern. Like these are very common thoughts and feelings that you can have and they can pass.
Yeah,
When it becomes more concerning is if they're prolonged feelings and thoughts or they get worse over time, right? Or if they're more intense, intrusive thoughts is an example of a symptom. But in general, like not immediately bonding or feeling connected to your baby or having like the identity shift and not knowing like who you are anymore or like who this old version of yourself was versus this new version, like those are all completely common and normal experiences that just come with becoming a mother, right?
exactly.
Or a
And
father.
I'm
So
exactly, yeah, exactly. And we might want to do a whole other interview on fathers because I feel like there's a
yes.
lot there's a
Yeah.
lot there that we can talk about. But hopefully, by doing more of these kind of conversations, somebody's more prepared for, okay, now I'm feeling this. I heard about it. I know that it's normal. It's not fun. However, maybe knowing and not being surprised will help it not be persistent, moving forward. So
Yeah, and if it is and if it does, you obviously like you cannot control, which is a big part I think of the guilt and shame piece. Like when I was going through my period of psychosis and everything that I experienced, like I felt like was having an internal battle with myself to like make it stop or, to mind over matter, like my own condition and like I don't need medication. Why is this happening to me? Like this shouldn't be happening. I prepared so much for XYZ. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't think yeah, I feel like the guilt and shame comes from us trying to prevent these things from happening and or not being able to stop them from happening. But by talking, like you said, by talking about it more, we can see how common it is. And that I think the biggest reason why I want to talk about these things is not to scare anybody, but to ensure that they are aware enough to be able to seek help. And of course, like be overly cautious if you or your spouse or partner is experiencing any of these symptoms, like you want to catch it sooner rather than later, right?
absolutely. And, I think that's the next point that, I think we want to make here. How important do you think it's, to have that support system and also to set it up? What does the support look like? What would you advise a new expectant parent to do prior to, that kind of due date to set themselves up for success, knowing that, okay, I'm probably going to have some new feelings.
Mhm. So support is definitely, critical during this time. And if I feel like if you're the type of person that doesn't normally ask for help, like this is the time to make an exception and think of it as a strength and not a weakness, asking for help. But yeah, you want to make sure that you know who your support system and team is. So that can include all of your, of course, your medical practitioners and providers, if whoever you've connected with so far, whether it's your OBGYN, your midwife, doulas, lactation consultants that we have at Anamav, and if you're already connected to somewhere else. If you have had previous mental health conditions, then you want to stay in touch with your psychiatrist or social worker or psychotherapist, just so that you have that continuity of care, and they are aware of what's happening in your life during pregnancy and postpartum. And then of course, like your family, which not everyone is fortunate enough to have, not just physically being close to you, but maybe they're not able to help you in the way that you need help during that time, right? Like I had both sets of parents in nearby enough to be able to help, but I
Mm.
still experienced what I experienced, right? Like they just weren't able to help in the way that I needed it or be able to recognize symptoms earlier. So I think family is great and they can certainly help with several different things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't still need additional help, right? Like every situation is different. Your friends, if you have other moms or parents that are going through this journey with you, it makes it less isolating, right? If you can meet up and have your babies play together, like I think that's wonderful. And then joining mom support groups, like mom groups, I feel like are very helpful during this time, even if it's not officially therapy, it can be a form of therapy, right? Just
Totally.
talking about your common challenges. And then aside from that, like if you need professional support, like I mentioned, like doulas or other types of supports, like planning those out in advance can just give you so much peace of mind to know that someone will be there for sure and that their sole focus is on you and making sure that you're okay, more than just the baby being okay, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think having these conversations and figuring these things out in advance is so critical.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of, setting yourself up, maybe even, to prevent things that maybe you think maybe would never happen. So, for example, um, you know, booking your lactation consultant appointment as soon as you can after delivery, even if, you feel like everything is okay, the doctors, the nurses, everyone told you that your latch is okay, just to get the expert, alternate opinion on what does the tongue tie look like? Is everything fine there, et cetera. So, seeking that help in advance to say, let's just let's just double check with someone who does this every day, who's an expert in their field, and who's looking at it from a different lens to tell me, is there anything else, or ask me, certain questions and, help me through some of those thoughts, et cetera, those strategies. I was going to ask you though, as you were talking, what would you say are some coping strategies or self-care tips in order to kind of maintain that mental wellness when you're not able to be with those experts? So, you've got your perinatal therapist appointment, but before that is happening, is there something that you can do in the middle of the night with all those night feeds that are happening or something like that?
I think I think regardless of what your state is, like what your specific circumstances are, like there are
Mhm.
some things that are universal, right? Like a baby is going to wake up at night and and need to be
Yeah.
cared for. Like there are certain things like it's just a phase that like every new parent has to go through, right? So definitely one of the biggest things I would try to work on is acceptance. And I'm obviously not perfect at it either. Like I struggled myself. But just there's guilt, or like you can have feelings of guilt or feelings of, oh, I'm not doing this right, or what am I doing, do I know what I'm doing, whatever. But then on top of that, if you add even more guilt about being guilty, like don't make things harder for yourself by, even if you have the guilt, like accept the guilt. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like
mm,
just working on acceptance, I think can really help with your
mhm,
mindset and your mental health. And taking even the smallest breaks.
mhm,
And that means like literally handing your baby over to someone else in the house for 5 minutes and just doing nothing
mhm,
for 5 minutes, whether it's going outside, getting fresh air is another huge one. If
mhm,
the weather allows, and like maybe not in the middle of the night, but other
mhm,
times of day, like stepping outside and just giving yourself those few moments. I think in those early months, the smallest moments and the smallest amounts of time can make a huge difference. Like even a 10-minute shower alone, just being alone and being your own person,
mhm.
and not like, someone else's life source, can really help you get perspective and know that this time is gonna pass.
Yeah.
Um,
I love what you say about acceptance and really not being afraid to feel your feelings. If you are accepting of what's going on, and you are kind of holding space for yourself in that moment. And you can cry, you can yell,
100% can cry.
you can do all of those
Yeah.
things, and it will really help your body so that you're not constantly bottling things up, which, will help, will make things a lot harder for you moving forward. So I think, I agree with you when it comes to saying okay, I knew this was going to happen. It's happening. It sucks. But I understand it. I know this is part of the process. I know this is not going to last forever. And let's just be okay to just live in that for 5 minutes and feel those feelings, because I think that the more you're able to kind of like release those feelings, the happier your baby's going to be, the happier you're going to be, right?
Mhm, mhm. And if you haven't already, if you haven't already identified people in your life that have gone through this phase, like now is the time to do it. Have them to lean on so that they can tell you, and you want supportive friends, not the ones that say like, haha. You want to make sure you're
Yep.
surrounding yourself by the ones that will tell you that this is going to pass and it's
Yeah,
okay and it's normal and all of those things, right? Like someone that has gone through this before you. So definitely
exactly.
want to have those friends.
It's totally okay to say no, or I need my space, if it's someone who, maybe their tendency is to say like, oh, like just suck it up and move on, or like, we're supposed to just
Don't talk
walk
to those people
feeling.
during don't talk to those people during the
Yeah,
first few months,
we can
maybe.
take a break. We don't have to see everyone, right? We can we can just limit ourselves and hold our own boundaries to the folks who will be really supportive, versus the ones who might not be comfortable with, non-happy feelings.
Yeah.
Those people we can reserve for later, right? I just wanted to, change the topic slightly. There's still a stigma around talking about postpartum mental health, and this is one of the things that this interview and many more, hopefully with you, it's meant to alleviate. So how do you think that we can encourage more like open conversations about these issues?
I think it's great to see that the awareness of perinatal mental health is growing. I think more and more people are realizing how common it is, and are there. It feels like there's a movement, and part of the nonprofit work that I do is a part of that, is a big part of that. But if you experience something and you share it, I think that's the biggest way to reduce the stigma and to increase awareness of it. And that's why I do it, right? And
Mhm.
I will never forget just recently at the Toronto Baby Show, like I was doing a talk, right, as you know, and afterwards I went and met another vendor, and she said, great job on the talk, but when you were sharing your story, like we started talking amongst the vendors, and it's not, like it's not even the expecting parents. This is just the other vendors that started talking about their postpartum experiences, and it got them talking. So I think the more people share their stories, if they're comfortable, of course, that'll help others feel brave enough to talk about it. And, there could be some that still haven't processed what they went through, or like, they parked it aside and years ago, and now it's coming up. Like you never know, right, what someone's experience
Mhm.
is. But I think definitely the more we talk about it, the more normal and accepted it can be, and
Mhm.
then we can help work together to prevent and support people that are going through it.
Absolutely. And I mean, social media is sort of like a really great thing, and can also be a not so great thing. Do you see social media, playing a role in a certain way in terms of helping to alleviate? I know that there's lots of things that are the opposite, but do you feel like there's a way that social media can actually help to alleviate that postpartum, stress or any of those mental health challenges?
Yeah, I think like if you focus on what you're viewing and you view real people with real stories that share like all aspects of motherhood, the good and the bad, the harder,
Mm,
right? Then it can paint a more realistic picture and help you feel not so isolated, right? But if you only obviously look at um good experiences that people have, then yeah, I can see how that would obviously have a very negative impact on your own mental health, right? And we know that not just in the area of motherhood, in all areas of social media, right? In all aspects. So,
yeah.
yeah, you definitely want to be careful to not only look at perfect examples of what a mom should be like, but
Mhm.
it is a great tool for outreach, like we said, right? So, yeah, I do think there's pros and cons.
I met an awesome social media influencer at the Prego Expo in San Jose, and she came to our booth and she kind of told us who she was. And it's so funny, like I'd been following her a few weeks prior to that. As soon as she told me who she was, I ran over to her and hugged her. And I said, "Thank you so much for just showing everything." Like showing the messy house, showing your kids running around, like, with stuff everywhere. talking about how like you don't really know what you're doing sometimes, like just showing it all, like all the good moments, like the toddler cuddling with the newborn type of thing. But then also, the not so great moments, those times where, it's just you talking to the camera yourself about like a really hard day. And I was just so like I rarely get to meet social media influencers in person. So it was really, really nice to be able to, not just comment, leave a comment in the
Mm.
feed saying like, hey, like, it's like I love hearing these things or whatever. It's so great to be able to actually um
See them as real humans.
yeah, give them a hug, like really express like
Yeah,
my sincere gratitude to the people out there on social media who really harness the platform to be able to show it all. And, kudos to them for
yeah,
being okay to show it all.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think there's so many people who really need to see that and to see the imperfection and to see like, oh, like my house looks just like that. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah, the more of that you can kind of follow, yeah, you're not going to feel like you're living unrealistic expectations.
for sure. Yeah, no, I think like now people, it's been talked about enough to know that like it's not always reality, or you're not seeing the full picture, right? Like everyone
Yeah,
would know that,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, speaking of social media, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. It's super important. Could you tell everyone where they can reach out to you, follow you, your website, the whole nine yards?
For sure. So Anamav Postnatal is our handle for Instagram. Our website is www.anamav.ca. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook. My cell phone number is up there, my email is there. You can any of those things that you contact will find me. So I'm open, I'm an open book really. I'm here for chats with any parents that are at any stage of parenthood. I love talking to expecting parents, to new parents, and really just this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? So yeah, happy to connect with whoever needs it. And I will mention there's also a free resources page on our website if you do need support. They are mostly specific. Some are specific to GTA, but some are virtual. So definitely take a look at that. Like if you're ever in a state where you feel like you need, urgent support, there's hotlines on there, lots of options for more immediate support. So definitely consider that. But aside from us, I'll just say we offer at this time, we're offering postpartum doula services, daytime and nighttime, as well as breastfeeding support, lactation support, as you mentioned, by IBCLCs. And we actually recently just added prenatal consultations as well for breastfeeding. So you can book with one of our IBCLCs just to get a better understanding. It's not meant to be a long session, but it's virtual and just meant to sort of, if you are anxious about that aspect, to just talk about what to expect in regards to breastfeeding right after birth. And if you want to talk about pumping, hand expression, combo feeding, whatever it is that's specific to you,
Yeah,
we're offering that now as well. So, and then as I mentioned, I'm planning to add psychotherapy services and several other things down the road that I'm constantly working on. But yeah, just, trying to support families as best as we can.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. We will put all of those links in the bottom of the videos. And it was a pleasure, Nancy. We got to set up another conversation. We got to get those dads in the mix too. Okay.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thank you.